Hello everyone, we have one more topic and that is rent control. Please note that I'll limit the discussion to the context of a landlord, not as a tenant. Regardless of where you're investing, whether it's in California or another state, you should always investigate rent control laws. These laws vary significantly between the states and the local jurisdictions. In California, a rent control ordinance, referred to as the Tenant Protection Act, was updated as of April 1st, 2024. Although I will not cover the TPA in this lecture, it is covered in detail in our course, Rent Caps and Just Cause Evictions. That course is highly recommended and provides a wealth of valuable information. In this lecture, we will take a slightly different approach and discuss the rent control statutes in the city of Los Angeles. The opinions about the statutes range from progressive to onerous. The name of the statute is Rent Stabilization Act. It went into effect in 1979 and it can be very onerous for landlords. The limitation on rent increases is not the primary concern, but rather its impact on evictions or removing tenants, which polarizes opinions. Increases in rents are limited to between 3 and 8% per year, depending upon the CPI index. I understand that part, but it's essential to remember that if you have a rental property, for whatever reason, you elect not to increase the rent for 1 year, and then in the following year you decide you want to raise the rent by more than 8% to catch up from not raising the rent in the previous year, well, you can't. Again, your increase in rents is limited to somewhere between 3 and 8%, and the CPI index determines it. Raising the security deposit is possible. The landlord is allowed to increase the security deposit by the same amount as the rent increase. Next, there are other categories in which the landlord is allowed to raise the rent. For instance, if the landlord provides gas and electricity to the tenants, the landlord is entitled to an additional 1% increase. Then there are some special categories. One of them is that the landlord can raise the rent by 19%, provided the landlord has not raised the rent at all since May 31st of 1976. Something tells me that doesn't apply much. Additionally, the code states that the landlord can charge an additional 10% for each tenant exceeding the number of tenants specified in the original rental agreement. Okay, that's enough on increasing the rents. Let's talk a little bit now about evictions. The rules about tenant removal need to be carefully considered. In the instance where a tenant has been in the property for longer than 1 year, there are limitations on removing that tenant. Briefly, a landlord can do it, but subject to paying relocation fees. I learned this one the hard way. In my situation, I bought a building about 10 years ago. My goal was to refurbish the units, re-tenant them with tenants willing to pay higher rents. The numbers seemed to make sense, but I wasn't aware of the relocation fee. For whatever reason, I didn't think that there was one, but there is. The building was larger. However, only 2 tenants had been there for more than 1 year. To rehab those units, I would need to relocate the tenants and pay a relocation fee. The rent was approximately $1,500 a month, which wasn't bad for the area. The relocation fee, as specified in the code, amounted to approximately $14,000 for each tenant. Needless to say, I wasn't having a good day. I was shocked because $14,000 is the equivalent of 1 year's rent. The tenants could have easily found another place to rent at that time. Understand, housing was not as big a deal as it is today. So if you're buying a rental property and expect to fix it up, re-tenant it, and then possibly sell it or increase your returns by raising the rents on the property, you had better check into the codes carefully. Again, what I was trying to convey here is the importance of understanding the rent control ordinances in the area where you're investing. This is a significant issue in certain counties and cities. If you have any questions about the material, please don't hesitate to let me know, and please post a comment or question in the forum. Again, check out the course Rent Caps and Just Cause Evictions for a more detailed discussion on some of the topics discussed in this lecture.